We all assume that everything in Fromville is there to get you. You have monsters that come out at night, houses that collapse on you, and a music box that could kill you in your sleep. But what if I told you there are actually some things in the woods that are trying to help humanity? Some things you wouldn't expect to be on the good side. And I'm not talking about the boy in white. After rewatching the series and closely analyzing all the facts, I came to an insane conclusion. The crows and nature itself are not there to keep the townspeople trapped. They are actually there to keep them safe. This video wouldn't have been possible without insufficient Ugert's insights. It really clicked for me after reading some of his thoughts about the show. I'll leave his Reddit profile in the description because, trust me, he has a lot of posts that are worth checking out. The series starts with the Matthews family encountering a tree blocking their way. We see them get out of the car and explore the scene. The weather is sunny at first, but once Ethan climbs the tree, the crows appear, and a storm begins to roll in. Then the crows start screaming. The family gets scared and they rush back into the RV. After that, they arrive in the town. Because of this, we assume the crows were a bad sign. Everything in the show seems to point in that direction. We saw a crow fly into a window when Tilly wanted to read tarot cards to see if Fatima's baby was okay. A baby that later turns out to be one of the monsters. Again, reinforcing the idea that crows are tied to evil. We also saw them at funerals. With everything we know so far, it was only logical to assume that the combination of storms and crows leads to something bad. Now, going back to the tree on the road, once the Matthews family turned back, it was sunny again. There was no sign of the storm. This made me think. The next time we saw a storm was at the end of Season 1 when they built the antenna. But just as they were about to start the broadcast, a storm hit. This was too coincidental to be natural. Something must have triggered it, and we assumed it was the place protecting itself, trying to cut off any chance of escape. But what if that storm was actually the opposite? What if it wasn't there to stop them, but to protect them? When the storm hit, everyone was ready to abandon the project and save themselves. But Jim refused to give up. He stayed in the storm and tried to make contact with the outside world. That's when he heard the voice of the man in yellow over the radio, telling him that Tabitha shouldn't have dug that hole. Right after that, Jim rushed home, and Tabitha fell into the underground tunnels. What if all of this happened because Jim didn't listen? If he had paid attention to the warning, if he had respected the storm, he never would have made contact with the man in yellow, and maybe that's the real reason he was killed at the end of Season 3. Nature tried to protect him, but because he ignored the warning, he set everything else in motion. I know this is hard to believe, but stick with me. This next part ties everything together, and you'll start to see things in a completely new light. In Season 3, we also learned that the boy in white directly intervened in the previous cycle and told Christopher everything about the children. Christopher didn't believe him, so Victor told his mother everything he heard. This is what led Miranda to go to the bottle tree and ultimately got her killed. After that night, everyone died, with the exception of Victor, and the cycle ended. I've said this in multiple videos, but in Fromville, there is a specific way things need to be done. You can't skip steps. You have to learn things on your own. That's the key difference between the previous cycle and the current one. In this cycle, Tabitha and Jade realize on their own that they are the reincarnations of the first parents. In the previous cycle, Christopher and Miranda were told the truth. They didn't discover it themselves. That's why things will be different now, and why this cycle might actually succeed. The boy in white even admitted this. When Victor wanted to cut down the bottle tree and the boy in white stopped him, Victor asked why he wouldn't help them. And the boy in white said he already tried that with Christopher, but you have to learn things for yourself. As we saw in the previous cycle, if you don't respect the rules, you pay. And if you learn something that important before you're ready, you pay the ultimate price. So taking all of this into account, wouldn't it make sense that the storm wasn't there to stop people from making progress, but to protect them from learning too much too soon? The storm tried to prevent them from making a mistake, but Jim didn't listen. And just like Christopher, he learned something he wasn't supposed to. Knowledge comes with a cost, is the motto for Season 4, and it might turn out that the price Jim paid for that knowledge was his life. At the same time the storm was approaching the town where they had built the antenna, we see Boyd and Sarah in the woods where their tent is dragged by a mysterious force into a new part of the forest, a place filled with spider webs. That night, Sarah tells Boyd that a new voice appeared, one that warned them to go back, saying there were things in the forest far more dangerous than they realized. That voice turned out to be Abby, and she admitted she made a mistake when she encouraged Boyd to go out and search for answers. After that conversation, we see the tent being dragged. Boyd gets bitten by the spiders, they see the lighthouse, and then the storm begins. If we apply the same logic, that the storm exists to prevent people from rushing the process, then this scene takes on a completely new meaning. The storm wasn't just a natural phenomenon, it was a warning. The voices told them to turn back, but Boyd ignored them. So nature had no choice but to intervene directly and force them to retreat. Because maybe, if Boyd and Sarah had continued toward the lighthouse, they would have done more harm than good. Maybe the children are at the lighthouse. And maybe if Boyd, infected by whatever those spiders gave him, had reached them, he would have passed that curse on to the children, killing them. And if that happened, the cycle would have failed again, and everyone in the town would have died. We've already seen Boyd carry something far worse than the monsters back into town when he brought the music box. So maybe the storm prevented that from happening again. And maybe the real reason Boyd and Sarah are still alive is because this time they listened and they turned back. It's also interesting to point out that the boy in white directly intervened in both cases. In one, he guided Sarah toward the faraway tree. In Tabitha's case, he told Victor to wait for her in the tunnels and showed him how to guide her back outside. Another element that supports the idea that nature is directly influenced by people's actions is what Victor told us, that the weather in Fromville never changes, and that this is the first time leaves have started falling from the trees. Because of this, the food began to rot, and once again, we assumed that this change was something bad. But as a result, our protagonists were forced to find new food sources, which led them to discover a new settlement in the forest. Maybe they reached the next level and the weather changed to push them out into the woods, to find new resources and uncover that settlement. Those cabins in the forest are more important than we currently realize. The biggest reason I say this is because they are located near running water. There are a lot of theories about the importance of water in this series, and I won't dive too deep into that here, but I'm almost convinced that the key to escaping this place is connected to water. In the Season 4 trailer, we see the main characters venturing deeper into the forest and taking shelter overnight in those cabins. We also see them being attacked by a new scarecrow-like monster. This is very important, because it suggests that whatever supernatural entity controls the evil in this place sees their actions as a threat. Remember, the only time we've seen the monsters run was when Miranda tried to go through the bottle tree. So, seeing a new kind of monster, one that can attack people even inside shelters, is definitely the show's way of telling us that things are escalating and that our characters are getting closer to escaping. What I'm trying to say is that the weather may actually be helping humanity escape, and that the storm was used to prevent them from making a fatal mistake. One of the most common questions in the fandom is, what would happen if someone walked past the tree? Based on everything we've analyzed so far and the fact that the moment Ethan climbed the tree, a storm immediately began to form, I think it's safe to say that whatever lies beyond it is far worse than we imagine. As Martin said, there are things in the forest worse than death, and maybe that's exactly what waits on the other side. Given that this is a puzzle box show filled with twists and hidden meanings, it would be a mistake not to consider the opposite perspective, that the natural forces in this place aren't working against the humans at all, but are actually trying to protect them. And if we're wrong about the storm, could we also be wrong about the crows? When I rewatch the show with this idea in mind, everything started to click, and I began to notice clues that support this theory as well. First of all, it's no surprise that there is a lot of mythology involved in From. And in mythology, crows aren't usually seen as something bad. They are actually viewed as something positive in many cultures. In indigenous traditions, for example, they can represent spiritual protection or the need to see things from a different perspective. Across different cultures and spiritual traditions, crows are often seen as messengers, protectors, or guides, offering deeper meanings beyond their physical presence. Crows are also known for their intelligence and resourcefulness, often teaching lessons about using your mind to solve problems or seeing things from a different perspective. Their black feathers represent mystery and the unknown, inviting you to embrace what you cannot yet understand. Another example is the crow count superstition, which comes from Old British folklore. 1 for sorrow, 2 for mirth, 3 for a wedding, 4 for a birth. Taking into account that the nursery rhyme, "Here they come for 3, unless you stop the melody," is also inspired by British folklore, we can assume that the crow count superstition might apply to From as well. Maybe the crow that killed itself to stop Tilly's tarot reading wasn't acting randomly. Maybe it was trying to wake Elgin up and prevent him from dreaming about the kimono lady. Or maybe, just like in Jim's case, it was trying to stop Tilly and Fatima from learning something they weren't supposed to know. If they had continued the reading, Tilly might have realized that the baby was one of the monsters, and since knowledge comes with a cost, something terrible could have happened to everyone in Colony House. So the crow intervened. Remember how I said that in cinematography, everything we see on screen has a purpose? When Tabitha and Victor were in the tunnels, they saw a crow being eaten by rats. I believe this is a visual representation of the conflict between good and evil. Crows are diurnal creatures while rats are nocturnal. The rats could represent the underground forces, the monsters that live in the caves, while the crows represent the surface or different force entirely. Seeing the rats eating the crow suggests that the underground force is currently dominant. If crows are messengers or protectors aligned with the good side, like the boy in white, then this scene could symbolize that those protective forces are being weakened. I don't believe that scene was random. In fact, I think it's very intentional. Why else would a crow be so deep in the tunnels? There are also theories suggesting that the voices Sarah hears actually belong to the crows. They are the ones who saw Father Kotri burying his bag on his first day. They are always watching, and they know everything that happens in the town. That's why the voices knew that Fatima had been kidnapped. The voices told Sarah they are helping her because they are also trapped there. And if they are trapped, wouldn't it make sense that they are on the good side? If they were part of whatever controls this place, they wouldn't be trapped in it. Their ultimate goal may be to help people go home, because if the curse is broken, they would finally be free as well. Some theories even go further and suggest that the people who die in Fromville become crows, that their souls are bound to the place. That would explain why they are trying to guide the living and break the cycle. The strongest argument for this is the voice Sarah hears in the woods, which seems to belong to Abby, because only she knew about Mr. Fish and Loaves. The reason the voices only give hints instead of clear instructions might be because they can't directly interfere without consequences. Just like when the boy in white intervened with Christopher and caused the cycle to collapse. Giving too much information too soon leads to disaster. Everything in that place seems to follow strict rules, whether it's good or evil. There is an order, and if you break it, there are consequences. The last thing I want to point out is the intro. At one moment, the mouth of the boy in white seems to resemble a crow. That could be a subtle visual clue reinforcing the connection between them, and supporting the idea that the crows are not there to harm the townspeople, but to help them. So maybe we've been looking at this all wrong from the very beginning. The storm wasn't there to stop them. It was there to protect them. Because in Fromville, knowledge isn't something you can rush. It has rules. And if you try to skip steps, the consequences are deadly. That's what happened before. And that's what this cycle is trying to avoid. So, if this theory is true, then the key to escaping isn't just finding answers, it's knowing when you're ready to face them. And the real question is simple: will they finally get it right, or are they about to repeat the same mistake?